This here is the Arturia KEYSTEP 37, and it was not a keyboard that I used a lot. The original KEYSTEP, however, is probably my most used MIDI keyboard ever, but the 37 just didn't quite hit the spot for me. Mainly because I didn't feel that the 4 knobs added that much in my workflow. You could use them to control external gear, and you can also use them to control the chord mode on it, but that was pretty much it. But today we're checking out the new KEYSTEP 37 from Arturia, and while it is similar with the 4 knobs, still only 4 additional knobs here, it is honestly quite a bit different. And in today's video I'm gonna explain why this is my new favorite MIDI keyboard. And a big thank you to Arturia for providing a review unit so I could make a video for you all. And this video was sponsored by Unz. It's the synth store you go to for indie synthesizers, the stuff that you won't find in regular stores. And they're definitely worth checking out, so use my link in the description. Unboxing the KEYSTEP makes for no surprise. You get the keyboard and a USB cable. Physically, the KEYSTEP 37 is very similar to the new KEYSTEP Mk2, except that you get 2 new buttons for MIDI CC and control, as well as 4 knobs and some additional keys. But as you'll come to see, the 4 knobs actually make a big difference in terms of workflow. The I/O is also identical to the KEYSTEP Mk2. You have USB-C for power and computer connectivity, you have MIDI in and out, you have sync in and out, you have a sustain pedal input, as well as CV and gate and 2 mod outputs. And if I compare how the new KEYSTEP 37 feels to the older one, I actually prefer the feel of the knobs on the older KEYSTEP 37. And also, if you take a look at the back of the unit, we no longer have this metal backplate, instead it's all plastic, making it a little bit worse in terms of build quality. So these 4 knobs can first and foremost be set up to control 4 CC values. But if you press control here, you can then use these knobs to control the sequencer, the arpeggiator, the mutate functionality, the chord mode, as well as the MIDI. So if I go into MIDI here, you can see we have per step MIDI configuration. And here you can use the knobs to, for example, change the notes. We're going to get into that more later. So we're going to start by playing a sequence. And now we can use these knobs to control ratcheting and time division. But more importantly, randomization. Which adds in notes. And also seem to affect the length of notes. So when it comes to the arpeggiator, what kind of control do we have? Well, on the original 37, you could change the type of arpeggio, and you still can. And you can change the octave range, as well as the time division. And if you want triplets or dotted, you hold Shift, press here to get triplets. Or again, for dotted. And you can also change the length. And like I said at the start of the video, you can use these 4 knobs to control 4 parameters times 4, because there are banks for different CCs. So in bank A, I'm controlling the 2 filters on the Lavaya synth. And if you want to, you can just quickly switch to bank B, have 4 more controls, bank C, 4 more controls, bank D, 4 more controls. And I must say, I really like the workflow of the new KEYSTEPs. You can have an ARP, send it to the sequencer. Then you can save it, go back to the ARP again, play a different chord, save it to the sequencer, and then you hit Shift and chain, select the patterns that you want to chain together, and that creates the basis for a song. So to show you the next function, I have this little beat here going on the digitact over here. And we're gonna make a little sequence here. So hold shift and we hold clear. And I better connect a MIDI cable here to sync up the key step to the digitact. So we have a little ARP going, we can hit Shift and 2 sequencer in order to copy the arpeggio into the sequencer. And you can save the sequence, and there are 4 banks and 16 slots per bank. So now that we have a sequence, we will double it up to 64 steps because the pattern on the digitact is 64 steps. And now, as you notice, that the bass on the digitact changed. So we'll have to change the arpeggio because it's in C and it's going to go up to E. So to edit the sequence, we just press record here. And now you can see the step. You can see the total length, and we can just scroll through the steps. And we know that we have to go to step 33 in order to change it to an E. E, there we go. And because we have the knobs, and use this knob to scroll through the notes, and you can use this knob to change the note value, it's just a way faster process than on the smaller Mark II key step. And if you select a note, you can not only change the note value, but you can also change the velocity of that step using the second knob, and then you can change the length of that step, as well as shift it positively and negatively. But we can also use these knobs to control the mutate functionalities. If you remember, mutate, if you see in the video on the KEYSTEP Mark II, mutate changes and randomizes a pattern in kind of unpredictable ways. But using these knobs, we can make it a little bit more predictable. So we can change the probability, the randomness, poly, which seems to just basically add notes polyphonically, so creating more of a chord sequence. And then we have density. I assume that's just density of notes being added. Kind of okay. Just changing it up a bit. Let's save that. And we can jump back to presets 1. Pattern 1. Jump to pattern 2. And let me be crystal clear, mutating a sequence isn't a sure way to get an amazing musical result. Sometimes it works great, and other times you'll hit the reset button. And honestly, while 4 knobs doesn't seem like a lot, to me, it just adds that additional small extra level of control over what we already have here. It basically makes the new generation of KEYSTEP feel complete, whereas the older KEYSTEP 37 just felt like a slightly bigger KEYSTEP with 4 knobs. Here, it actually improves the workflow significantly. So that's why I like it. And since we like this little sequence that we got going, we can hit Shift and overdub it. Just record something over it. And if you want to, you can quantize it, hit Shift and press this key here. And there's also different quantization strengths. And if we don't like what we have going on here, if we want to play something else, we can just reload the pattern and it reverts to the saved state. Now, if you haven't seen this generation of key steps before, it can seem a little confusing with all the knobs and buttons and so on, but it's really not. It's a straightforward little MIDI keyboard. You have the sequencer, you select it. That puts you in the sequencer mode. Press record in order to enter the note record mode. So we can, you see, we're just adding more notes. You have the arpeggiator mode, and with Shift and ARP, you send the ARP. So send the ARP that you have running into the sequencer, turning the ARP into a sequence that can then be saved. And yeah, like I showed you, you can change it up in a bunch of ways. mutate, you hold down mutate in order to randomize the notes, the note lengths, and so on. And then you have chord, you can turn chord mode on. You can also turn off the scale here. You see it turns blue when there's a scale engaged, so we can have it off for now. And then you have this little metronome here, sets the tempo, and you can also set the length of the ARP or the length of the sequence. And also the ARP can also be mutated, but it's not like totally randomizing stuff. You have the hold button here, octave up and down. You have pitch bend and mod. And then if you're in ARP and sequence, I think, we have basically a gate mode, which lengthens the gates and shortens the gate. And spice, which adds ratcheting and also impacts the gate. I personally don't use the gate and spice function that much because I find it cumbersome to hit shift here in order to engage and use it. But yeah, maybe you can use them. It's just some additional performance controls. And there's of course the chord mode. So we can select a preset and we can do user. And basically that means that if I hold down chord, I make a 4-note chord. And yeah, that works for the ARP as well. If we turn off the ARP, we have a chord, we can put it into major scale. And when chord mode and the control have the same color, it means that we can control the chord settings using the knobs here. The settings are also, and there's some additional settings in the menu for chord as well. So if you just hold down chord, I should get to the menu. You can see preset, spread, then strumming, sync, strum type, so we can change what kind of strumming, up, an alternative up, and so on, so how it strums. But let me just show what strumming is. So basically, we put on strumming. The more we increase this millisecond setting, the longer it takes for the chord to play all of its notes. But you can make it even more interesting by changing the spread and have, for example, aftertouch control the spread. Or velocity, or just set a different spread. And that's basically the number of notes in the chord. And there's also a setting for voicing. Basically, voicing makes the chords sound nicer. And you can also set them to bass, meaning that you get a nice little bass tone. And again, the knobs here make a big difference because you don't have to go into a menu to change some of the more important stuff. And yes, the keybed does feel improved over the original KEYSTEP and the KEYSTEP 37, but it's not a night and day difference. It does, however, have aftertouch. Which is kind of nice, especially since you can use it with the spread functionality, so we can set it to aftertouch. So at the start of the video, I mentioned that I have one complaint. I think I talked about it in my original KEYSTEP Mark II video, and that is that the sequencer, while more powerful than the one on the old generation KEYSTEPs, still can't record anything other than like basic note data. You can't actually record like CC messages into it, for example, which is a shame on the KEYSTEP 37 Mark II because you have the knobs here, and I would love to be able to record knob movements into the sequencer. But as far as I know, reading in the manual, I can't seem to find any way of doing this. And it would obviously make a lot of sense given the controls here, and also it would make sense to kind of differentiate it, not only physically, but in terms of functionality from the KEYSTEP Mark II. So for me, that's a missed opportunity and something I really want to see in a future firmware update. However, I don't think it's impossible. I think, you know, it should be doable to add motion recording for these knobs into the sequencer. So that's pretty much what I have to say about it. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and as always, have a great day. Talk to you later. This is the one YouTube ad you don't want to skip. Unz is a synth and music gear store that focuses on gear from small manufacturers, the synths that you won't find in the big stores. Say you need a patch bay for your studio, well, they have the DF Audio Mini Bay, which is simply fantastic. Or why not the DFAM's little brother, the Metal Fetishist, or the newly released Drop synthesizer, which is just crazy. They also have the Bastel Bestie mixer, which is a portable analog mixer, which I use for my local synth meetups. Or why not pick up some synth stands by Synthrise? And I've met the guys behind the store, and it's a store by true synth nerds for us synth nerds. So use my link in the description of the video and check out Unz. You support my channel and small indie manufacturers.